First story. I moved back home to help my grieving family after my sister's death. But then my mother accused me of something unthinkable. I don't think I'll ever forget the way my world shifted in just a few moments. You know, life is so unpredictable. One second, everything seems normal, and the next, you're faced with a challenge that changes everything you thought you knew about yourself, your family, and even your own capacity to deal with pain. It's one of those moments that truly tests who you are and what you're made of. It all started years ago, when my sister, Olivia, was just 9. I was too young to fully grasp the gravity of what was happening, but my parents, they were in a whirlwind of emotions that I only began to understand as I grew older. Olivia was diagnosed with leukemia after a long year of misdiagnoses, and my life, along with my family's, was forever changed. I was just a little kid, only 3, so I couldn't really remember the details, but I could sense the weight of it all. The sadness, the fear. It was a shadow that loomed over everything, but I couldn't really grasp its meaning. Olivia and I were always different. It's not that we didn't care for each other, but we were like polar opposites. She was reserved, shy, and deeply sensitive, while I was the opposite, loud, energetic, and always buzzing with life. As a kid, I always wanted to play with her. I'd see her sitting quietly, and I'd drag her into my world, but she wasn't always in the mood. I know now that I probably annoyed her more often than I realized. But like any sibling relationship, we pushed through. We weren't close, but we had a kind of understanding, a shared history. When I left for college at 18, our paths seemed to drift even farther apart. The physical distance turned into emotional distance, and we didn't speak much. It's easy to do that when you're caught up in the whirlwind of your own life. You forget, or you push aside, the people who were once a big part of your world. But everything changed about 5 months ago, when my parents called to tell me Olivia's cancer had returned, and this time, it was much worse. I was in the middle of finals and schoolwork when I heard the news. It felt like the ground had been ripped from under me. I didn't know what to do at first. I wasn't sure how to process it. But then something inside me shifted. I couldn't just sit back and be a bystander, a distant witness to her pain. I couldn't be the person who only heard about it from others. I packed my things, finished the exams I needed to, and headed straight to the hospital. Olivia was different this time. She was fragile, and the thought of her being vulnerable like that made my heart ache. At first, she didn't want me to see her like this, weak and fighting for breath. But I wasn't about to back down. I convinced her to let me stay, to let me be there. I didn't push her for deep talks or anything heavy. Instead, I made her laugh. I brought out my phone and we played around with silly filters. I told her funny stories and just tried to create moments of normalcy. I wanted her to feel like herself, even if only for a short time. But the cancer was aggressive, and the hospital didn't have the proper resources to treat her. Just 6 weeks after her diagnosis, Olivia passed away. I was heartbroken for her, but I couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sadness for my parents. I wasn't devastated the way they were. I think in part because I hadn't been as close to Olivia as I should have been, and now I regretted that. But I could see how deeply it tore at my parents. My mom was inconsolable. She started talking to Olivia as if she were still alive, whispering to her like she was just in another room. My dad, quiet and stoic as he always was, carried his sorrow in silence. I couldn't bear to see them like that, so I moved in for a few weeks. I wanted to help them with the funeral, take care of the little things, the chores that needed to be done. But juggling that and my college work was exhausting. Still, I tried to be there for them as much as I could. One day, I needed to go to the bookstore to print out some school materials. I told my mom, and she gave me this look. It was one of those looks that made me pause. I didn't know why at first, but her gaze lingered, suspicious, as if she thought I was hiding something. I told her I was just going to print out school stuff, but she didn't believe me. Why are you going to print the pictures you took of your sick sister and plaster them all over your form to get a laugh with your brain-dead college clique? She said, without any hesitation. I stood there, stunned. My own mother had accused me of something so terrible, so vile, I couldn't even find words to defend myself. I had been there for her, for Olivia, for the family. I was trying my best to hold everything together. But this accusation? It felt like a slap in the face. I took a deep breath, trying not to lose my cool. That's incredibly inappropriate. I am deeply hurt and offended that you would even suggest something like that when I have been nothing but supportive. I'm going back to college, Mom. I don't know if I can live under the same roof with you after this, but if you need any help with the paperwork or anything, I'm here. You and Dad can still contact me. And with that, I left. I texted my dad, trying to explain why I had to leave so suddenly. He immediately took my side, and without another word, he left too. I didn't know when he would return. The support from my college friends was overwhelming. They were there for me in ways I didn't expect. They didn't judge. They didn't question. They just let me talk, let me be. But my mom, she kept calling, accusing me of abandoning her, of being a monster. She went on about the most painful moments of Olivia's death, sharing details I'm sure Olivia would never have wanted anyone to know. She talked about the times Olivia had been so embarrassed by her condition and about how she'd even tried to end her life. It was too much, too personal, too raw. And honestly, I didn't know if I could ever forgive her. I understood why she was acting the way she was. She was traumatized, grieving, alone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had just crossed a line. I've tried to give her some grace, but the words she said still echo in my mind. I don't know where we go from here. All I know is that I've tried my best, and in the end, I think that's all anyone can do. Second story. AITA, for refusing to use my late wife's trust funds for my stepchildren's college expenses, even though my wife and her family say I'm playing favorites. When it comes to family dynamics, things can get tricky, especially when money is involved. The balance between fairness and loyalty can sometimes blur, and even the most well-intentioned decisions can spark unexpected conflict. I found myself caught right in the middle of that dilemma, unsure whether I'm doing the right thing or if I've been too rigid in my approach. I'm 42 now, and I've been through my fair share of ups and downs in life. I have 2 biological children, Emma, who's 16, and Noah, who's 14. They're from my first marriage, and I was lucky enough to have a strong, loving partner in their mother. But unfortunately, she passed away a few years ago, leaving behind a substantial inheritance for our children. When she passed, I knew the importance of preserving that wealth for their future, and I've taken great care in managing their trust funds. It's not just about money, it's about securing their future, whether that's for college, starting a business, or whatever path they choose. That inheritance is their safety net, and I want to make sure it's there when they need it. A few years after my first wife's death, I remarried to my current wife, Laura. Laura is 39, and she has 2 children from her previous marriage, Ethan, who's 15, and Sophie, who's 12. I love them both, truly. They're kind, intelligent, and I try to treat them just like I treat Emma and Noah. My wife has always made it clear that her kids are her priority, and she's worked hard to provide for them. Her ex-husband is still involved in their lives, and he contributes to their financial needs. While I help with their everyday expenses, we never really discussed mixing finances between my biological children and my stepchildren. Each family has their own set of needs, and I've always respected that. Then, a couple of weeks ago, my wife brought up a topic that caught me completely off guard. She suggested that we use some of Emma and Noah's trust funds to help cover extracurricular activities and possibly even future college expenses for Ethan and Sophie. Her argument was that it wasn't fair for Emma and Noah to have such a financial advantage over her children. She believed that as a family, we should pool our resources together equally for all the kids. At first, I thought I'd misheard her. Those trust funds weren't just a pile of money. They were carefully set up with my late wife's wishes in mind. We'd always discussed making sure the kids had everything they needed in life, but their future was always the focus. It wasn't about fairness in the moment. It was about ensuring they'd have what they needed later on. I told Laura that I couldn't agree to take money from the trust funds meant for Emma and Noah. It wasn't just a financial decision. It was a promise I made to my late wife to honor her wishes for our children. I offered to work with her on finding other ways to secure funding for Ethan and Sophie, whether that meant saving together or seeking other financial avenues. But Laura didn't take it well. She felt hurt and accused me of playing favorites, of not fully accepting her kids as part of the family. The tension built quickly, and soon her parents got involved. They said I was being selfish and that it was my responsibility to treat all the children equally. That I should be treating Ethan and Sophie like my own, and that the money should be shared no matter where it came from. Things got even more complicated when Emma and Noah found out about the situation. They could sense the strain in the air, and it became an uncomfortable issue at home. They started worrying that they were somehow being resented by their stepfamily because of the inheritance. It wasn't their fault, and I hated that they were feeling caught in the middle. My children, who had already lost so much, were now questioning whether they were being unfairly singled out. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I love my stepchildren, I really do. I want them to have every opportunity for success in life, just like I want for Emma and Noah. But at the end of the day, I made a promise to their late mother, and I don't want to break that promise. I want to honor the intentions behind the trust funds and keep them for Emma and Noah, just as she would have wanted. But now, with the pressure mounting from my wife and her family, I'm torn. I feel like I'm being forced to choose between honoring my late wife's wishes and being fair to my new family. So, now I'm left questioning whether I'm being too rigid in my decision, or if I'm right to stand firm in protecting the future my first wife envisioned for our children. Have I been unfair to my stepchildren by not sharing this money with them, or am I simply honoring the legacy my late wife left for Emma and Noah? Am I the asshole for refusing to let my biological children's trust funds be used for my stepchildren's future? I'm honestly not sure anymore. Third story. Boyfriend insists his 15-year-old brother lives with us forever. I set boundaries, and he accused me of betraying family. Tension builds to a breaking point. My boyfriend and I have been together for 4 years now, and we're in a good place, with plans to marry in the next 2 to 3 years. He's always been independent, living away from his family since a young age. His family lives overseas, so they're not around much. But recently, future plans have been coming up, plans that have left me feeling a bit uneasy. One of the biggest things on his mind is that his younger brother, who's 15, will move here in 2 to 3 years to finish high school and eventually attend college. He's already made it clear that he wants his brother to live with him during that time. At first, I tried to be understanding. I mean, his brother would be a teenager, still figuring out life, and it seemed fair that he wouldn't be expected to live alone at that age. But here's the catch. We've been living separately, and we've agreed not to move in together until we're married. The plan has always been that we'll start our married life just the two of us, building our life as a couple. Now, the idea that we'd start off our marriage with 3 people under one roof doesn't sit well with me, and I'm struggling to get on board. I told my boyfriend that if his brother is still in high school, I'd be okay with him staying with us temporarily. After all, he wouldn't be an adult yet, and he'd need a place to stay. But once his brother turns 18 and starts college, I expect him to move out. At that point, I want my home to be just for my husband and me, our private space. It seemed like a reasonable compromise to me. But my boyfriend has been insistent that his brother should stay with us, even after he finishes high school and moves on to college. This isn't just a temporary thing. He wants his brother living with us for the foreseeable future. To give you some context, I've spent quite a bit of time with my boyfriend's family to get to know them better. His brother looks up to him a lot, which I totally understand. He listens to my boyfriend and would probably do anything he asked. But when it comes to me, the dynamic is completely different. His brother has been openly disrespectful, often calling me names jokingly, or just treating me like I'm not as important as anyone else in the family. It's not a one-off thing, and it's been wearing on me. When I bring this up to my boyfriend, his family brushes it off, saying that his brother is just being a teenager. But I can't help feeling that there's a double standard here. I don't have siblings of my own, but I do have cousins around the same age as my boyfriend's brother. None of them have ever been rude to him. If they were, I'd make it clear that it wasn't okay, and I would expect the same respect from my boyfriend when it comes to how I'm treated. I suggested a middle ground. His brother could stay with us until he turns 18, but once he hits that age, I expect him to move out. If my boyfriend is so concerned about his brother, we could find him a place next door. I'd be okay with that, as long as it's not under the same roof, and I can still have my privacy with my husband. But once again, my boyfriend shot this down. The more we talked about it, the more frustrated we both became. Every time I tried to explain my side, my boyfriend would just shut it down. I started to feel like my feelings didn't matter in this situation. The worst part was when he accused me of trying to keep his family away from him, and told me that, because I'm an only child, I couldn't possibly understand the importance of family. That really hurt. I feel disrespected, and honestly, I'm heartbroken. I've been thinking about it for a while now, and I've come to a painful conclusion. If my boyfriend and I can't find common ground on this, if he's unwilling to compromise on something that's so important to me, then maybe it's time for us to go our separate ways. When I told him that, he accused me of giving him an ultimatum. I never wanted to feel like I had to make that choice, but I also can't live in a relationship where I feel this unheard and disrespected. It's a difficult situation, but I've made up my mind. If he's not willing to meet me halfway on this, then maybe we're not meant to be. I deserve a partner who respects my boundaries and wants the same things for our future. Right now, I don't think we're on the same page anymore.